No space, no problem. How's it going, ladies and gentlemen? Hello and welcome to, or welcome back to Heartland Junction. Today we are going to be talking about the next layout type, I guess you could say, in my model railroading in small space series. Last time, it's been probably a couple months at this point. Last time we were looking at my 2x4 N-scale layout, what you could do with, a small N-scale board with a continuous circuit of track, but today I wanted to do something a little bit different. As much as I enjoy N-scale and HO scale, something that I am really interested in, never have really experimented with much, is O-gauge. And this might seem like a bit of an oxymoron, saying O-gauge in a small space, but that's what we're looking at today. Now when it comes to O-gauge, I'm specifically talking about the 7mm 2-rail O-gauge, so not your typical Lionel, three rail O-gauge. That you can actually probably fit in a smaller space because a lot of those trains are less realistic because they're built to operate on tighter curves and things like that. We're talking about the more realistic stuff, gauged and running on, more realistic curves like you'd see in HO or N scale. And the equipment that I have here is British. I don't have any American O-gauge equipment. I don't have that much in British equipment either. But so when we talk about fitting O-gauge into a small space, it really comes down to a point-to-point layout, because in order to have a continuous circuit of track with the what's considered second radius, which is the basic pico set track for O-gauge, you need about a 7-foot turning radius. That would be, you need 7 by 7 feet just to go in a circle, which is obviously not a small space. It's not realistic. Now, if you were dedicating an entire room to that, that would be different, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about what you can do in a small space. So when I talk about a small space, we're talking about your typical, American small secondary bedroom, which, some of those are like 9 by 9, anywhere up to as big as, 12 foot by 10 foot. This room is 9.5 by, I think, 10.5. And so my thought with this is, you can come about 1 to 2 feet off of the wall, and then you have the full length of a wall. We'll go with the smaller wall, so 9 to 9.5 feet. We'll say 9 foot to be on the safe side. So I'm going to show you what I have set up here. And specifically, the type of layout that we're talking about is the Inglenook Shunting Puzzle. Now, you may have heard of this before, you may not have. If you haven't, I'm going to go over that here in just a minute. What the basics of it are, the variations of it that you can look at, and you can apply this to pretty much any scale of model railroading that exists. Obviously, we're talking about it in O-gauge today, but you can also do it with HO and N scale if you have an even smaller space. Obviously, you can get quite a bit smaller with your layouts if you're doing something more like a diorama, which is just, your locomotive and a little bit of scenic and stuff, but I don't really consider that to be a layout because you're not really going to be having any functional operation of it, whether running in a circle or back and forth, point to point. So first of all, let's go ahead and take a look at what the Inglenook is. I'll give you a little bit of background on it, the size variations of it, I guess you could say, and then I'll show you what I've got set up here as a demonstration layout. The Inglenook Siding Shunting Puzzle was first thought of by Alan Wright in 1979. Now, the standard design of the Inglenook is the 533 design. You have the layout, as you can see here in the picture. The longest siding holds 5 wagons, with the 2 shorter sidings holding 3 wagons each. The head shunt allows for the engine and 3 wagons. So when you're operating, there are a total of 8 wagons plus 1 engine in play. Operational rules of the Inglenook siding stipulate that a departing train needs to be formatted in a consist of 5 cars out of the 8 sitting in the sidings. The 5 wagons are selected at random, and the order is also selected at random. The challenge is then shuffling the cars back and forth until you are able to get all 5 of your cars in order on the main line, with the other 3 cars remaining in the sidings. There are other variations to this puzzle, including the one that we'll be looking at today in O scale, which is the 3-2-2, And then I believe you can also do a 744 variant if you have a larger amount of space to work with. So like I said, the layout that we're going to be looking at here in O-Gauge, in order to make this fit in as small a space as possible, we're looking today at the 322 variant. As you can see here, that's also called the minimal Inglenook. While this is still perfectly functional and has a good amount of play value, it does have a significantly smaller amount of variation than the standard 533 design. Okay folks, so here we are over at the table. You can see for reference here, you can see this is the table that I have been using for my Cato N scale videos. I have my 2x4 layout down on the bottom there. We got our Pico track here set up already, and we'll take a look at the starter set box here, which is pretty much everything that I used to put this layout together. This amount of track here is just right, actually even a little bit longer than I need for the 322 variation of the Inglenook Shunting puzzle. You can see we have two switches, we have a variety of straight track and a couple of curves here. Curve not necessarily necessary, but I put them in here to make the layout a little bit more compact width-wise. This table, as you may remember from the other videos that I've done, is about 6 feet long, and the width of the table is 2.5 feet. However, the width at the widest part of the track here, which is the end to that siding over there, is only 1.5 feet. So you don't actually need the 2 feet depth. The only reason I have it laid out this way is because of the length of the table, which is just a little bit shorter than what we really need. As you can see, I've got the sidings hanging off the edge on both ends here. We need about 6.5 length of feet. And now I did a little bit of calculating and figured also that with the amount of space here, this track, this is the 5-car track or the 3-car track, and this one here as well, these are both long enough to accommodate the 533 design, as would be the outer siding there. Once I added the small extension I would need to have the last buffer stop. The only track that would need to be extended in order to make it a 533 variation would be this siding here, and we need about another 6 inches. So in order to build the standard Inglenook, you'd only need about 7 feet, maybe just a hair longer, to ensure that you don't have your track running right up to the edge of the board. So if you had that 9-foot long wall, you could easily build the Inglenook Shunting puzzle here along the wall. Right now, and I can't really zoom this out any farther, but as you can see, this is the Pico O-Gauge starter track set, which is available from a variety of retailers online, depending on where you live. And pretty much what's in this box is everything I used for this track set. This is really all that you need in order to build this Inglenook puzzle. And as you can see, there's it's got the description of what comes in the packaging, as well as some basic variations that you can do using what is in the box. We have basically plan number 4 set up here, except these sidings are all one straight piece shorter than is shown in the picture. Now, if you added those in, you could easily have the 553 design, which, as it shows you there, this is approximately the minimum size of board that you would want. Again, 7 feet is long enough if you were to cut like a couple of these pieces down to shorten them up. If you didn't need the extra space, but the extra length, or if you're really tight on space and still trying to do O-Gauge, you could still accomplish this variant in approximately 6 feet, maybe 6 foot 6 inches to be safe. Now, I did purchase this brand new from Rails of Sheffield over in the UK. When I bought it, I don't remember exactly what I paid for it. I want to say it was around $300 US. It's hard to say for sure because the prices on these fluctuate with the change in the exchange rate. But for, like I said, about $300, you can get one of these starter sets and have enough track to build your own O-Gauge shunting puzzle here. Alright, now that we have the basics out of the way, I figured what we would do next is just have a little bit of fun and demonstrate how the Inglenook works in the 322 variant. So we have 5 cards here, I'm using sticky notes, that have the 5 different vans that I have, or 5 different freight cars that I have here on the layout. I'm going to shuffle them up and then draw a random selection of 3, and that will be the 3 cars that we need to collect, and in the order that we need to collect them for our train. So starting up in the back position, we need to find, the brake van. It's already there. That's going to make this a little bit too easy, probably. The second thing that we need to collect is the shock assault van. And the last car that we need is the flat car. So this is not going to be a great demonstration here. That would simply be moving this guy over to the far siding and then pulling those 2 in that order together back over here. So let's reshuffle that, see if we can get a better consist here. Like I showed earlier in the video, unfortunately having this variant, your amount of unique trains is going to be significantly smaller than you would have with the 533 design. Like I said, this could easily be converted into the 533 design if I had about 1 more foot of length on this table, or if I just had a wooden baseboard that I could put down on top of here. Right now this is what we're working with. Alright, let's try it again. The car in the final position will be the coal hopper, so we need to get this guy back there. In the middle position is going to be the salt van, again, okay. And last up is going to be the brake van, okay. So we need to get this guy into the front position, this guy needs to go back there, and we need to get the salt van in the middle. So let's go ahead and get our locomotive moving, and we will get that sorted out. So the one and only downside that I've come across as it pertains to the British O gauge is that the coupling, while very realistic, can be quite a bit fiddly here. So I'm going to maybe try and do this on camera for the first coupling, and then I'll cut it between takes here, because the trick is getting the coupling hooks, or coupling chains here, onto the hooks, and it's very fiddly. But I'm sure that doing this a lot over time, I'll get better at it. There we go. There's our first coupling done. And now I need to do the same here for the brake van and the coal hopper. I think we've got it there. Nope, not quite. There we are. Alright, now we can back our train up, move these guys out so that we can park that brake van out of the way, and get the coal hopper in its correct spot there in the back. Here you can see another design that I had for an Inglenook. This is just a very rough thing that I put together. This was in HO, and the baseboard that I had set up for this variant was 8 foot long by, I think it was only 8 inches wide. I'd have to double check that, but you can see here from this design that we have your Inglenook sidings here on the left side, which are, we've got like the 2 short sidings on the upper and lower section, and then we have the longer length of track in the middle with a built-in locomotive runaround, so that after building your 3-car long train in the middle, and then having your 2 cars parked down on the bottom track, then you can run your locomotive around the backside of the layout and shunt those 3 cars here into the siding over here at this factory. So you'd put 1 car in there and put the other 2 cars down into the bottom track there. And then once you're done, then you go back, collect those cars, take them back, park them on that middle stretch of track, run back around those cars, and then you can go through the puzzle all over again. And so that's going to wrap it up for today. This has been our look at the Inglenook Shunting puzzle in O-Gauge, and we also, I guess, took a brief look at what you could do with it, a little bit more with it, I guess you could say, in HO. Again, all fitting within that no wider than 1.5 foot deep, and then lengthwise within that 9-foot stretch of track. Obviously, with HO and N-scale, you can get a bit smaller. I think with HO, the test version that I did using the smaller British rolling stock, I was able to get it into about 5-foot space, and then N-scale, obviously, you can get quite a bit smaller even than that. But again, today's main focus was looking at what you could possibly do with O-Gauge in a small space. So let me know what you guys thought about this, and I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next video. Not sure what we'll do next, but I guess we'll just wait and see. So thank you guys so much for watching. We'll catch you in the next one. Have a nice day.